Back in the 90s, Doom and Quake were duking it out for the shooter crown. Now, in 2023, Quake II has been given a fresh coat of paint and is available to play on Game Pass. We're taking a look on Xbox Series S. We cover a new game every single week, so if you end up enjoying the video, do consider subscribing. And with that, we're turning back the clock and letting you know if Quake II is worth your time. You lot really were built different in the 90s, but man, did you have some good games. Quake 2 is simply excellent when it comes to gameplay. There is such a fine line between keeping you on your toes, yet making you feel nice and powerful that is handled brilliantly here. The core of Quake 2 is running around, shooting everything that moves on the way to your next objective, and on a handful of occasions, platforming. The levels sprawl and wrap around on themselves, but should you get lost, there is a compass that will point you to your next objective. There are even some secrets to find. I was always engaged in the space I was fighting through and constantly searching for those extra pickups because resources are limited. Health and ammo do not regenerate, they have to be found. You do have an unlimited ammo pistol, so you can always fight, but the real power comes from the roster of weapons on offer. I could go on all day about my love of the super shotgun, but every weapon here serves a purpose. The chain gun burns through ammo almost as quick as it burns through enemies. The grenade launcher lets you get creative with corners, and the railgun penetrates enemies if you manage to line them up. Absolutely every weapon here feels great to shoot. This meant I was constantly switching weapons to fit my situation, and it made for a wonderfully varied experience. Movement takes a little getting used to as you accelerate very fast, but once you get the pace of the game down, everything comes together. You can play Quake 2 slowly, but nothing beats zipping around a room blasting aliens whilst attacks fly everywhere. Guns don't require a reload, and enemy attacks have a predictable rhythm. The pace of the game was simply divine, and I quickly lost track of the hours. Enemy design is also fantastic. You have your standard soldiers, bigger soldiers, but then you have flying dudes, flying robots, these jumpy fellas, evil fish, and absolutely huge boss robots. Each enemy has to be approached uniquely, and the game uses encounters to test you, but also make you feel insanely powerful later in the game when the overall difficulty does rise. Some enemies will even continue to attack after you've killed them, like these machine gun guys spraying bullets everywhere as their lifeless bodies fall over. The later enemies are hard to down and hit like a truck, but the game does know when to let loose and allow you to just destroy an army of grunts like they're nothing. I've sung Quake 2's praises, but I do have a few issues with the gameplay. They're absolutely not enough to knock a point off, but they're definitely worth mentioning. First, these dog enemies are the worst. I hate them. Who invented them? And why do they hate us? Secondly, towards the end of the game, difficulty feels a little artificial with the game spawning enemies behind you during certain combat encounters. You'll be fighting a big dude only to lose a chunk of your health to an enemy you didn't hear over the gunfire from an area that you've just cleared. It is a frustration, but once you learn where the enemies are coming from, it ceases to be a problem. I think the fact that you can create custom checkpoints really helps with this, because if you were having to play through massive amounts of the level again, it would be a genuine frustration. There is also the multiplayer, which is simple arena shooter fun. It's a blast, but I am absolutely terrible at it. Overall, this gameplay experience was simply excellent. I love the pace and the feeling that you get from zipping around and killing everything in sight. It's just pure fun, but with enough challenge and depth to really feel satisfying. This is an easy 5 out of 5. This is your friendly reminder that this section is called Art Direction, not Graphics. We are going to start with the look of the game, which whilst simple is very effective. Honestly, that could describe the entire art direction here. Each level has a unique environment, and the only bad thing that I can say about these is that they get a bit too dark sometimes. For the other 99% of the time, environments are wonderfully designed. There's always something interesting to look at, and areas have great elevation and diversity, rather than being boxes. This only further helps to keep the gameplay variety up. Elements that you can interact with in each level are always nice and distinct, and those compass icons always stick out should you need them. This is all even more impressive considering that the game is largely using the same colour palette for the whole run, and the textures are very basic. Creating areas that stick in your mind with these kinds of constraints is pretty impressive. Each weapon has a great unique model, animations are simple but once again effective, and they never get in the way of the pace of the gameplay. Some weapons, like the rocket launcher and railgun, have excellent particle effects when you fire them, and this extends to enemies with similar attacks. I particularly loved these bouncy grenades, they just looked and sounded awesome. Enemy designs are all extremely clear and distinct. It is always super easy to tell what you're up against, and remember the attacks that each enemy can hit you with. Should an enemy actually get a hit on you, you get a nice green marker so you know where to aim your divine justice. Delivering that justice always looks awesome too. Enemies explode into a mess of blood and guts, and it is always awesome. UI design is clear and lightly stylized in gameplay. All of the information you need is nice and readable, and menus are easy to navigate. Sound design is top notch for the most part. Each weapon sounds incredible and the explosions are loud, despite the slightly small visual effects, which still look great in their own. The only problem I had with sound design was that a few of the character and enemy sounds just get a bit repetitive, and in the case of jumping as your character, it sounds a little silly. It's a small thing, but it did pull me out of the moment. The OST is good, it absolutely supports the gameplay, but I felt that it got a little bit lost in the rest of the chaos, and in the quieter moments it did feel a little repetitive. It's a weird one. The OST is absolutely not bad, I did really enjoy it, but I wasn't missing it when it was lost in the gunfire. It exists in this weird space. I'd also like to single out that opening cutscene because it pulled me right into the game with some excellent direction and presentation. It very quickly establishes the look and feel of the game before dropping you in for the real deal. The extra coat of polish has absolutely helped Quake II, but honestly, the art direction is fantastic. The game looks great despite simple textures and animations, and sounds awesome. None of my complaints here are enough to knock a point off, and as such, Quake II gets a 5 out of 5 for art direction. Quake II knows that you're here to shoot first and ask questions later, but it does give you enough context to get you going. Humanity is at war with the Strogg and has decided to counterattack their planet, Stroggos. This goes pretty wrong, and you are one of the few survivors who needs to complete their mission. The story here isn't really anything special, but it is enough to set the mood. I do like the little cutscenes at the beginning of each mission that tell you your objective. These feel like a massive precursor to those mission briefings in Call of Duty. There is some emergent narrative present. You'll be able to tell your friends how you scraped by with 5 health against a giant robot that one time, but once again, there's nothing insanely unique here. Quake 2 is getting a 3 out of 5 for a pretty average narrative offering. There isn't really a lot more to say. Quake 2 is an excellent content offering that is technically sound. We experienced no bugs during our playtime. Content-wise, you're getting the original Quake 2 with both expansions, Quake 2 64, and a brand new expansion called Call of the Machine, and of course the multiplayer. There is a lot here. You can also play everything with your friends. The whole game has a cross-play co-op or competitive, depending on what you're playing. There is a wonderful array of settings present. You can completely remap controls. This is always great to see. Aim assist, invert look and vibration can be enabled, and vibration intensity can be adjusted. X and Y sensitivity, aim acceleration and acceleration exponent all have sliders. Aim smoothing can be toggled. Dead zones can be adjusted for each stick. Run attract demos can be toggled. You can adjust where your weapon sits on your screen, change weapon on pickup and auto power shield. View bob, HUD, teammate indicators and hit markers can all be toggled. You can adjust crosshair style, scale and colour. You can customize your character model, skin and tag for multiplayer. Crossplay, voice chat, microphone, push to talk, direct connection and network stats can all be toggled. There are audio sliders for music, sound and voice volume. Reverb and subtitles can be enabled, but there are no further subtitle options. This is fine though, as the base subtitles are nice and readable with a background. There are sliders for brightness and field of view. You can choose split screen, split direction and enable texture smoothing. Safe zone can also be adjusted. CTR simulation, anti-aliasing, depth of field, bloom lighting, motion blur, enhanced models, muzzle flashes, color light maps, square particles, fog and dynamic shadows can all be enabled or disabled at your leisure. You can disable all settings if you wish. High contrast, alternates hype-faced, read chat out loud, transcribe voice chat and speak for me in voice chat can all be toggled. Screen flash amount, center and corner message time, maximum lines and chat message time all have their own sliders. Finally, there are major language options. There is also the id Vault, where you can look at models from the game and even get a look into how the original Quake II was developed. This is awesome. Frankly, this is all excellent. Quake 2 is a massive content package that is polished to a shine. There's a great array of settings and even some added goodies. This kind of care absolutely deserves a 5 out of 5. It's going to take you around 8 hours to beat Quake 2. If you want to go through the base game, all of the expansions, and 64, you're going to be looking in the 20-hour realm. I think that this length is absolutely justified. There's not a lot of fat here, and you can save at any time. Checkpoints are tied to saves, but if you want a more classic experience, the game saves every time you pass a loading screen into a new area. It is incredibly easy to fit Quake 2 into any amount of time. Missions are going to take you on average about 20 to 30 minutes, maybe 40 at the absolute highest end. But simply put, my time never felt wasted, even when I was dying a lot. Hard drive footprint is also tiny, clocking in at bang on 3 GB. You're getting a lot for that tiny install. I have absolutely zero issues here. Quake 2 respects both your time and hard drive, and naturally gets the full 5 out of 5 on our commitment scale. Quake 2 is worth your time. I had an absolute blast with this, even if I got put in my place with a handful of encounters. It's pure, fast-paced fun, and has stood the test of time over 26 years. I'm only upset that it took me this long to play it.